Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. One of my viewers wanted me to talk about the tragic murder of Sophie Lancaster. Now, in August of 2007, Sophie Lancaster and her boyfriend, who were Goths, were walking through a park in the United Kingdom. Now, as your Sophie and her boyfriend were going on this walk through the park, they were confronted by 5 teenagers. Now, these 5 teenagers did not like the fact that Sophie and her boyfriend, Robert Matby, were Goths, so they attacked Robert Matby first, who was probably trying to protect his girlfriend, and they knocked him unconscious. And as Sophie was trying to cradle her boyfriend and plead for the attack to stop, these teenagers then proceeded to kick her repeatedly until she was unconscious. And after they left your Sophie and your Robert for dead, the police came on the scene and saw that that Sophie and Robert suffered such severe head injuries that their faces were so swollen that no one could figure out if one was female or one was male. And after your Sophie and Robert were taken to the hospital, both were put into comas, and sadly, your Sophie Lancaster never regained consciousness and was taken off life support 13 days after the attack. Now, your Robert Matby did recover from his injuries, and he eventually wound up being able to wake up. Unfortunately, he lost all of his memory of the time leading up to and during the attack. Now, this whole incident was extremely disturbing because these teenagers were sitting there gloating and boasting about literally beating Sophie and her boyfriend to death. And when I take a critical examination of the way these teenagers acted, it really takes me back to the dark days of the 1980s and the 1990s, and 2 incidents that were a major part of my adolescence. Now, one of the incidents I will always remember from my adolescence was the Howard Beach incident. And this Howard Beach incident was where a black man went to Howard Beach, Michael Griffith, and as he went to Howard Beach, he was confronted by a group of white youths outside of a pizza parlor who they targeted him just because he was black. And after they targeted him, he then was trying to escape from these individuals, and he wound up getting hit by a car. Now, this incident again was one of the most disturbing ones because it was just like the whole murder of Sophie Lancaster. A group of teenagers decided to target Michael Griffith, and the only reason why they wanted to target Michael Griffith was because he was black. And the other incident that I remember from my teen years was the murder of Yusuf Hawkins. And in the case of Yusuf Hawkins, he had gone down to Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, to go look for a car. And as he was going to look for this car, he was confronted by several white males who thought he was some guy looking for some white woman as related to some rumor in the neighborhood. And these individuals confronted Yusuf Hawkins, and one of them, Joey Fama, allegedly shot and murdered Yusuf Hawkins. Now, when I look at the whole case of Sophie Lancaster, it mirrors the same kind of evil I saw growing up as a teenager in the South Bronx in the case of Howard Beach and in the case of Yusuf Hawkins. And in both of those cases, we had a group of white teenagers who decided that somebody didn't belong where they wanted them to be, and they felt justified in doing harm to that individual for just being themselves. Because the only reason why they wanted to murder Sophie Lancaster was because they thought that a Goth's life had less value than their own. And that's the way many of these white supremacists think. They believe that they have a right and a justification to hurt other people because they don't fit into their smooth world. And that's the way they felt possibly about your Sophie Lancaster and her boyfriend, Robert. They probably felt, oh, these two Goths, they don't fit into my world. They felt like they were less than people. And because they felt like they were less than people, they felt like they were justified in doing harm to those people. And that's something that I find to be absolutely sick and downright disturbing, because only a sick, depraved person can dehumanize another human being and then believe that they have a right to do harm to that person. That's what happens with a lot of people as related to the Goth subculture when they see people who are Goth. And again, it mirrors the way that black people are treated right here in America. So when I look at what happened to Sophie Lancaster, it is the same kind of hatred that I've seen from your white supremacists, because they don't like people who don't fit into their boxes and don't fit into their smooth world, so they feel like they have a right to go out here and do harm to them. And this has been something that many people in the goth scene have had to deal with for many years, because when people are a part of the goth scene, they are oftentimes being abused, being attacked, and have to deal with all sorts of kinds of cruelty from people. And it's just not right for somebody to treat another human being like this, all because they like a certain kind of music and they want to live a lifestyle that is on the darker side of things. And this is the way these racists and people like this think. They think it's okay for them, again, to do harm to a goth, and they'll go out here and abuse goths. And this is something that isn't really talked about a lot, about how your goths are attacked all the time. I mean, they have to suffer verbal abuse, they have to suffer all sorts of people thinking that they have a right to put their hands on them. And this is something that happens all the time. And it happens, I believe part of it is because a lot of goths are very pacifistic, a lot of goths are shy kids, and a lot of goths, again, they really don't know how to defend themselves. So these are the kids who are on the outside, so they get attacked all the time by the bullies and people. And it's, again, people thinking that they have a right to do this when they don't. Now, the whole tragic murder of Sophie Lancaster was something that made the goth community start to galvanize as related to the violence that they were seeing, because once they saw that a member of their subculture had been murdered, they said enough was enough. And that's one of the things I applaud the goth community for coming together on, was because if you don't value your life, then others won't value your life. And they went out here after the murder of Sophie Lancaster and demanded justice. And they went out here and protested and made demands, because they understood that an attack on one member of the subculture was an attack on all of the members of the subculture. And that's one of the things that led to them getting some kind of justice. And most of the members, again, of this mob were convicted. But what really troubled me about that whole conviction was it, again, mirrored what happened with Howard Beach and your Yusuf Hawkins, in that one of the killers was released from jail after 15 years. Now, one of these killers had gotten a life sentence for murdering Sophie Lancaster, but the whole thing was that he got out after 15 years. And again, that shows me that the goth community has to go out here and get stronger as related to getting the tangible of justice, because you cannot let this type of thing slide. Because if you don't go out here and set a boundary as related to how people will treat you, they will go out here and continue to disrespect you. So one of the things I advise many people in the goth subculture to do is go out here and continue demanding the tangible of justice, because if you don't demand the tangible of justice, this will all go out here and embolden many more of these people who think it's their justification to go out here and do harm to those who are a part of the scene. So that's something that I believe many people in the goth scene really need to get on, because the goth subculture has, as I see it, a very strong community, but you have to start demanding more as related to political power. Now, this is something that I've seen with the goth scene. They have strong economic power. They have this, and they have strong businesses, but they have to start turning that economic power into political power so that there won't be any more Sophie Lancasters. That's something that I believe is something that the goth subculture really has to start galvanizing on, because it's not right for anybody to go out here and abuse people who are alternative. It's not right for people to go out here and do harm to people in the scene just because they want to be part of the scene, just because they want to dress in goth attire, and just because they listen to a certain kind of music. It's not right for people to go out here and believe they have a right to harm someone just because they are dressed in a certain way. And a lot of these people who do this type of violence, they do it because they see a goth person or a person in the scene as, again, less than. And this is the same type of hatred that racists and white supremacists have, because you're racist and you're white supremacist. They sit there and they would look at a goth or person in the scene at the same way they would look at a black person. And that's why I say there's a lot of mirrors and parallels to the goth subculture and the black community. And I've said that the goth subculture really reminded me of the old school black community before the feminist movement co-opted it, because you have a subculture of people who have their own businesses, have their own economic base, and have their own systems of doing things and lifestyle. But the whole thing is they have to start galvanizing for political power to create laws to protect them. Now, in the aftermath of Sophie's passing, we saw them create a foundation to be at the Sophie Foundation so that there wouldn't be any more violence against Goths. But I believe it's time to take it to another step, with one of her murderers being allowed to be free. So I believe it's time for the goth scene to start using its economic power to get some political power, so that the people who are a part of the scene can get justice and they won't get mistreated the same way I believe they were treated. Because for a guy to get a life sentence for murdering a person who was goth and then get out after 15 years, I believe that is extremely egregious, because your Sophie Lancaster couldn't get her life back. And that's why I say that it's time for people in the scene to start really thinking about using their economic power to get political power. Now, that's my opinion and observation as related to Sophie Lancaster, because I wouldn't want to see another Sophie Lancaster lose her life. And I believe that people in the scene really need to start taking their rights very seriously, because you do have a right to live. And in countries like the UK and the US, you are supposed to have the right to a life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And you have a right to go out here and be yourself and express yourself freely without having to deal with some individual who is insecure, believing that they have a right to perpetrate violence on you. And in order to protect that right, you have to set boundaries. And I believe that, sadly, we need more people to start thinking about trying to set boundaries as related to getting justice in the goth scene. And again, this is just my observation, because almost 15 years after the passing of Sophie Lancaster, I want to see the goth subculture be a safe place for people who want to become a part of the goth scene, whether they be white, black, or whatever race or whatever religion. It should be their choice to do this, and not feel like somebody that's going to come after them and threaten them for just being themselves. So when I really look at the case of Sophie Lancaster, again, it was a tragic murder, and it was one that was met with the right response from the goth scene. But I believe it's time for people in the goth scene to start really getting serious, because in order to stop people from participating in this kind of violence, you have to set a hard boundary to let them know that where the line is, and they will go no further. So I was deeply saddened about this story when I heard about it years ago, and I'm really, again, really sad about it, but I understand what it is, because I myself am an introvert. I've been a loner and an outsider for many years, so I know that there's a target on your back for being different. I know there's a target on your back for being on the outside, and there are people who see you on the outside. They think that it's their right to go out here and do harm to you, but we have to stand up and let them know that we have just as much right to live as anyone else out here. So that's the whole thing that I want people to understand about this tragic case of Sophie. It's what happens when good people don't do anything, and good people in the goth scene and in the rest of the world, we have to do something so that it ensures we don't see any more Sophie Lancasters lose their lives. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, and my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to request a video like the viewer did, you can donate to the Cash App by clicking the link in the description box. And if I know something about that subject, I will make that video for you. And if you want to learn more about the Black Goth scene, you can pick up my books in the Spinsterella trilogy on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format, Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella. Discover the dark side of love in this goth and lovely romance with Spinsterella. Get Spinsterella in paperback and e-readers at your favorite online bookseller today.